Hi, welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for being with me today. I wanted to talk today about something that's been on my heart and my mind a little bit. Um, you don't think any of us gets through this life without asking at least once, if not a lot of times, why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I on this earth? And of course, that leads to us, I think, thinking a lot about, am I successful? What are my definitions of success? And I've said several times on this show, that success often we define in this very competitive, materially competitive world. We think about success in terms of, what car I drive, what clothes do I wear, what house can I afford? And then when your kids get a little bit older, it's what school are my kids in? And I've talked about the fact that my definitions of success have changed a lot. As I've gone through my survival journey. But one of the things that's come back around for me lately, and it's something that's been a part of my life for a long time, and it's that, when you take your gifts in this life, you take your job, your talents, the way you play, the way you have joy in the world, and you turn it around, you lean into it and give it back out to others. I like to call it giving it back in service. It certainly changes your definition of success. And I was reminded, my dad is no longer living, but I was reminded of my daddy. He was a man who was just incredibly compassionate about people in the world who had less than he did. There was never a weekend that you wouldn't find him, somewhere with people who had needs for food, needs for housing. And he was not a man of means at all. But whatever he had, he wanted to give it back. That was his joy. And he taught my sister, Lisa Harper, and he taught us something that I value so much and I lean on very hard in my world. And that is when you are working with people who have food scarcity needs, who have housing needs, who are underserved in any way, it's not about the material thing you give them. Daddy loved to go to Guatemala. Guatemala was one of his favorite places in the world, and he just had such a love for the Guatemalan people. And he would talk to us about it, and he would say, I can take my friends with me there, and they can bring medical needs, and we can build houses, but that's not what gets me going with these people. He said, I like to go in and I like to just listen to them. And the most valuable way you can serve another human being is to give them their dignity. It's one of the most beautiful things he ever taught me and my sister. Lisa and I have both been in ministries of some sort since we were very young. And if you know anything about my sister, you know that you look at her life and everything she does is serving and is ministry. And one of the most beautiful things she's ever done, I think, is adopting that amazing little girl, Missy, from Haiti, who has just been an incredible journey for all of us. And she has a big piece of my heart. But from very early on, we both followed, a lot of what we learned from my dad. And I worked with the underserved, with the homeless from the time I was probably in my 20s and into my 30s. But I was in my 40s, and I had been working with the YWCA for a long time. And Dr. Musimbi Kenyaro, she was the then global president of the YWCA, amazing woman, asked me to go to India. I'd never been to India before. And she asked me to meet with leaders, YWCA leaders in India, and take a look at what was going on with the programs that they were doing. How could we, as women and leaders, do it better? How could we serve the women of India better? And so I got on a plane all by myself, went to India, all brave and full of courage. And the first thing that happened was that I was just gobsmacked by the Indian people. I fell so in love with them as a people and as a culture. The culture is so rich and so vibrant. Yes, there's great need. Yes, there's great poverty. But what I saw that I loved so much was that no matter what the socioeconomic level of the person. The Indian people as a culture had so much pride and honor in where they came from and who they were. And so it was my next to the last day in India. I'd been there 2 weeks. It was the longest I'd ever been away from my own children. And, my head was just full with everything that I had seen and how much I wanted to help and trying to figure out how to come back and make a report. And I realized the day before, oh my gosh, I haven't gotten anything for my own 2 boys, and they will be waiting at the airport and expecting a gift from Mama. And I had been gone way too long, I'm sure, in their eyes. And so I was in an area that was very poor. There was no retail. And I asked somebody, is there anywhere I can go get a little something for my kids? And I was told there was a street market up the way. So I climbed this big hill, and there was, in fact, a street market. And I was standing there, looking at little trinkets on a table, and I felt a tug at my sleeve. And I looked down to see just the most adorable, gorgeous little boy, dark black hair and huge brown eyes. And I thought he was probably about 6 years old. So I had something in my hand. He said, no, lady, don't get that. It's no good. And I just laughed out loud at him. I thought, well, this little guy really, has opinions. And so then I went to the next table, and he was like, no, lady, no good. Don't get that one. I thought, okay. And so after about the third one, I just started walking with him and talking. He really had just, he kind of captured me. And so I was talking to him, and I found out that he was, in fact, 9 years old. And he was the oldest of 11 children. And he was living with his mom and 10 siblings. And I learned his name was Pavi. And so I said, Pavi, where do you live? And he said, well, I live down that mountain. Well, that mountain was where I had just come from. And it was a very, very large slum city. So I thought, okay, I kind of know. And then instead of just having fun, my brain kind of kicked in and I went, this child's got to be hungry. So I said, Pavi, are you hungry? Yes, lady. I said, okay, well, let's get you something to eat. And we went over to a little food stall, and, there were sandwiches and snacks and drinks. And I said, what would you like? And he said, none of that. I said, okay. So we went to the next food stall and then the next one, and he would not say anything other than, no, I don't want any of that. So finally I said, Pavi, what do you want? And he said, lady, I want rice. I was like, okay. Again, I was clueless. And I said, well, Pavi, where do we get a bowl of rice? He said, not a bowl. I want rice for my family. And so then everything that had happened before became clear. He was working me so that I wouldn't spend my money on gifts for my kids, but that I would buy rice for his family. I said, okay. So he, of course, knew the stall I was supposed to go to get the rice. So we go over there, and this was, a dusty, not very big stall, and they had rice in burlap bags. And I'm thinking we're going in to get like a 10-pound bag of rice, right? So just like everything that had happened before with Pavi, I would point to a bag of rice, and he would say, no, I don't want that one. So after about 3 or 4 times, I said, Pavi, what do you want? He pointed to the highest shelf in the stall where the bags of rice were enormous. And he said, I want that one. And I just cracked up. I said, how will you get it home? And he did a little dance. And he smiled really big. And he said, on my head. So I called the man over and I said, okay, we want that bag of rice. And, the man was struggling to get the rice down on the ground. And so we, got it down. I went to pay for it. And I was at it wasn't even a register, but just a little place you paid. And they had Kit Kat bars. And so I picked up a Kit Kat bar and I said, hey, Pavi, would you like some candy? And he said, I've never had that. Okay. And so we sat down together on this big bag of rice, and I unwrapped the Kit Kat bar and I broke off a piece, and I reached out and said, hey, Pavi, try this. And he looked at me for a long time, and he looked at that candy, and then he kind of hung his head. He said, no, lady, I can't. And I was so confused. I said, Pavi, I want you to have it. Please take it. He said, no, lady, I'm dirty. You go first. That was one of those moments when everything you ever thought you knew kind of crumbles, and you go, this child has such a sense of honor and dignity. And so finally I did take a bite of the Kit Kat, and then I got him to eat it, and you would have thought he'd seen stars when he tasted a Kit Kat bar. And by that time, I was really just so enamored, and I just loved him so much, and he was at the door of the stall, and he was trying to, balance his little body and put this huge thing of rice on his head, and I was kind of laughing at him, and I just blurted out, and I didn't really mean to. It was my need, not his. I said, "Bobby, can you come back in the morning?" And he stood there with the rice, and he said, "Lady, I don't work on Sundays." And I thought, oh my gosh, this is his work. He's providing for his family, and he's got boundaries. He does not work on Sundays. But that's a story that's very precious to me in my past, and, give me some grace if I'm not always PC. Sometimes I don't know what I say that isn't PC. But that child I've carried with me for a very long time. And I tell you the story because I think we remember stories more than we remember concepts. In his way, Pavi gave me so much dignity. I think that's exactly what happens when we serve in the world. I've never once done anything where I thought I served that I didn't come back and know that I was the one who got the gift. I was the one who was ministered to. I was the one who came away with more joy. And that's exactly what happened with that little boy. I might have bought rice for his family, but he gave me a lifetime of something to hold on to. So just encourage you to take whatever you have, whatever joy or gift or work you have, and push it out into the world, because that is your greatness. Thank you.